I was recently interviewed by Stephen Gardner, where he asked many questions around the concerns, the fears, best strategies for Social Security. And Stephen is someone who has a large following, well over 1 million people. And so I thought I would include that interview here on my channel as well. And so here's the interview.
All right, I have a special guest with me today, Lane Martinsen, and we are going to be talking about the latest news on Social Security, when you should get it, if you already have it, different rules and information that you need to know about. Lane is the author of The Holistic Retirement Planning Revolution. He is also the creator on the YouTube channel Financial Fastlane, and I'll link all of that down below. But I get so many questions, Lane, in my comments about Social Security. I thought, why not just bring on an expert? So thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate it. The opportunity to be here, Stephen.
Okay. So one thing that I'd like to know is, one of the big worries is Social Security isn't keeping up with inflation. The other big worry is what's going to happen with the Social Security Trust Fund if the knuckleheads in Congress don't make any reforms or changes that would keep this important program moving forward.
It's definitely a hot topic, and there's a lot of people with a lot of concern for sure. So, from the mid 80s all the way till 2020, there was a surplus, right? So Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system, meaning the tax revenue from the FICA tax is coming in from the workforce into the Treasury, and then it is paid out. All the benefits are paid out. And there was always enough to cover everything up until about 2020. And so there was a surplus. So the surplus was money that was going into the trust funds reaching about, 2.9 trillion. And so now, for the first time, we have not enough income coming in from the workforce, right? And so as of 2020, they've started to dip into the trust funds. And so it is projected by 2034, and I think it's probably going to be closer to 2030, where there will be a shortage, and there's going to be some issues.
Okay, so basically you have like a stream of money going by, and then you have like a reservoir. And if there's not enough water, then they dip into the reservoir. And that's what they're saying. We're worried that this is going to run out. Not that the stream will run out, but that it won't provide enough money for 60 million Americans that are on Social Security. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, and the stream is shrinking, right? Because we're retiring at about 10,000 people per day, right? This huge baby boomer generation started retiring in 2011, and so it's about 3.6 million Americans are retiring each year, and it's going to continue at that rate for about the next 10 years, right? So it's not slowing down, but the workforce is shrinking, right? Our birth rates and our population is aging. It's interesting. The fastest growing segment of our population is age 85 and older. I mean, think about that for a minute. It's amazing. That's the fastest growing segment of our population.
Wow. Yeah, that's just because people are living longer, or why would that be growing?
Well, it is partly certainly because people are living longer, but it's also just kind of the anomaly of the baby boomer generation, where there's so many 75 million baby boomers born post World War, from the soldiers that came back from World War II. And it's just if you look at the baby boomer generation throughout their life, they've always had a huge impact on everything, right? Because it's this significant size of the population. And so we have more retirees, more people leaving the workforce, heading into retirement than we've ever had. It's unprecedented, right? There's never been we can't look back in history and say, yeah, we can kind of see something like this in the past. It's new territory, and it has issues, right? There's risks, there's concerns. There's certainly nothing that isn't solvable with clear-minded heads and people willing, to make solutions. But there's challenges for sure.
One of the fixes, for lack of a better word, that I've seen on the table is from Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont saying, hey, there is a tap-out point for higher income Americans where they're not charged Social Security above and beyond a certain amount of money, and they want to now tap into the difference, that higher amount, in order to collect more funds. Do you see something like that passing, or maybe what are some of the other areas where they might be able to fix the program?
Yeah, so you're talking about how much of your income is going to have the FICA tax applied to it, right? And that number has been increasing, and I think that'll continue to increase, but it doesn't solve the whole problem, right? I mean, it's something that could help. There's several changes. I mean, there are reforms that can certainly help solve the problem with Social Security. I tell people, because we have a lot of people who are worried, it's not going to be there. First, the projection is, if it's 2034, in that range, what the estimate is that it's not that Social Security benefits would go away or stop. It's that they would be reduced across the board by about 25%, which would be devastating. I don't think the American people are going to stand for that, honestly, regardless of political persuasion. Everyone is, when you think of all the government programs, everybody feels differently about Social Security. And it's because they know they've been paying into it for all these years. Their employer has also been paying in, 6.2%. The employee pays 6.2%. Self-employed people pay 12.4%. And so they've been paying into it, and they've been anticipating it. And so there's a very different feeling about Social Security, and the American people want it. So I don't think it's ever going to be, I just think that they're going to make some changes that will help solve that. Now, we have other problems way more difficult to solve, but Social Security is actually not that unsolvable.
Yeah, I mean, like, people have differing opinions on immigration, abortion, access to medical, things like that. But when it comes to Social Security, they're taking a bite out of every apple. And so we all feel it. I certainly feel it. That 12.4 bite out of my self-employment tax, it hurts, it stings, right? So that's good to know that there are solutions and things available. I'm personally not a big fan of depending on the government. I know a lot of people do. I don't think that they want to, but, unfortunately, wages haven't really kept up with inflation for the last 50 years. But what are some measures that individuals who haven't started taking Social Security should be aware of? Are there ways to maybe defer retirement for a couple of years, and that adds extra money over the course of their lifetime? Or what are some solutions where people can feel like they have a little bit more control over their financial future?
Yeah, so Social Security is surprisingly complex. And, if we look at the trends of how many people are claiming early, at the earliest age of 62, how many are deferring, and why are they deferring, right? If we go back into, and this was a study done by Boston College, in 1996, the majority of men and women were claiming at 62. By 2013, it was more like 42%. And then by 2018, it was 27% for men and 31% for women. And so more and more people recognize that there's more money on the table with some Social Security planning and some strategies. The majority of folks, they get really confused. And so the Social Security Handbook has over 2,700 rules. And then there's another system. It's called the Program Operating Manual System. It has over 100,000 rules to define the 2,700 plus rules. And it's super complex. And why is it so complex? It started as one thing, and it's been changed, it's been modified, it's a government program. And so the nature of laws and changing and whatnot, it's become quite complex. I would say more complex than our tax system, if you really look at it. So Social Security was designed, or the initial intent was that it would be actuarially fair, whether you started early or if you waited and started later, that on average, you're going to get about the same money, right? Because if you claim earlier, you have more years of benefits, although they're reduced. If you wait a while, you have fewer years of receiving the benefits, but when you do, they're larger. The thing that's changed, one of the big things that has changed, is the fact that we are living longer. Because these mortality tables that were fair were set up a long time ago, a very long time ago. And so now there's actually more money available when you defer significantly.
Is there because I understand what you're saying. You're saying, okay, if you can take a 62 and get a smaller amount, but you'll take it for longer, or you can defer, but you'll get a higher chunk of money for the years you are alive. Is there a sweet spot, or should that be looked at with a professional on an individual basis?
It's definitely something that's very personal, because it's going to be, what's the best strategy for an individual is going to be very different than their neighbor, for a host of reasons. Marital status, age, other sources of income, taxation on Social Security benefits. That's something that people a lot of times don't think about, and then they're surprised in retirement that their Social Security benefits in retirement are being taxed. And that can actually be avoided for most people with some good planning. And so that's one of the things that we try to help with, is positioning assets such that we optimize and maximize not only Social Security benefits, but retirement income benefits. It's a mistake to think of Social Security. So if you're getting close to retirement age and you're thinking of your retirement income, and you think of Social Security as kind of this separate thing. So, let's think about this. And then you got your other stuff, your investments, your home, your whatever, if you have a pension, maybe, or whatever. And if you compartmentalize those into separate things, you're gonna lose some money, because you can create efficiencies when you're coordinating. And that's kind of the holistic planning concept. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, mathematically, it comes out pretty significantly.
Okay. And I'm assuming your book goes through that and gives people at least a 10,000-foot view, if they weren't working with you, idea of what to do. And then, of course, people could reach out to you for individual assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's socialsecuritylane.com is where people can learn more about that. You asked about a sweet spot. So everyone has a break-even point. Sometimes I refer to it as a crossover point, but it's probably more accurate to say a break-even point. So what that means is, at what point does deferring the start of your Social Security benefits result in more income? And that's what's called the break-even. And it's going to be different for each person, but it's typically around age 79 to age 80 is the break-even. And so the question you want to ask yourself, one of the questions, is, do you think you're going to live past 80? Because if you live past 80, then there's a significant additional money that can be had by deferring. Some folks will say, well, I just want the money while I'm young, but you really have to think about those later years, because the average life expectancy is 85 for a man, 86 for a woman when they're in their 60s, right? Don't get confused by national averages, because that takes into account infant deaths and so forth.
Okay.
But you don't want to have those last years. If you live to 85, that's 5 years. If you live to 90 or so, it's significant. We're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional benefits by having thought through a good strategy.
Jeff, and you probably know this off the top of your head, but if I at age 65 say, I'm going to wait till age 63, is there a scheduled percentage increase each year that I defer, or how is that calculated?
Yeah, it's going to vary a little bit based on your date of birth, right? So the full retirement age, it is different based on that. But generally, if we say you have a full retirement age of, say, 67, so anyone who was born in 1960 or later, their full retirement age is 67. So if your full retirement age is 67 and you start Social Security benefits at age 62, it's a 30% reduction in the benefit. And that's a permanent reduction. And now, so that doesn't mean you're not going to have COLAs, right, or the cost of living adjustments. That you're going to have that either way. But you're starting out at a lower level, and that's a permanent reduction.
Okay, so just so that I understand, I wish I had a graph here, but you basically add like a graph where you're showing, hey, they're going to penalize you just a little bit until you get to that full retirement age. Then after that, they're going to bless you with additional money.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a crooked bow tie, right? Where it's like, okay, as we get closer to the center, that bow tie gets skinnier, and then eventually it starts to get fatter, right? And is that what you're talking about, that finding that sweet spot for each individual?
Yeah, there are times I tell folks, it'll actually make sense for you to start early for some people, based on your circumstances, based on your needs. For other people, you're making a mistake. You're leaving money on the table. You're creating penalties. You're creating additional tax that's unnecessary. It really depends on what's going on with your needs and your whole situation. We've had millions of views on our channel on this subject, and we get these thousands of comments, and there's a lot of strong feelings, a lot of opinions, and some people just think, I just want to get what I can. I want it now. The best thing to do is always take it now, or I'm going to take the money, and then I'll just invest it. And a lot of times, what people want to know about that, well, doesn't it make sense if I just take the money early and invest it? Well, then I would ask, well, where's your income coming from? Well, if they say, well, they're still working, now you've got earnings limit issues, right? There's going to be some penalties. They're going to withhold, and the withholding of the benefits, it's going to come at a sporadic, time when you're not expecting. You're used to getting the Social Security benefit, and all of a sudden they turn them off because your earnings was higher than the earnings limit. And so, if you have a source of income that's not from work and it's not from net business income, they're not going to penalize you for other sources of income. And so, if you have that, now we could actually build a case where, yeah, you could start earlier and invest it, as long as you're not getting the penalties, as long as the taxes are in place. So there's scenario. I can create a scenario in almost every imaginable circumstance. And so I just encourage people to, if you contact Social Security Administration and you're eligible to receive benefits, they are just more than happy to start those benefits, right? And you just want to know that, how long have you been paying into Social Security? For how many decades? And how many decades are you going to be depending on? It's a significant part of any retirement plan. And so it really deserves more than a quick decision. You just want to make sure you're thinking through all the decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it is in their benefit to have you start early, because then the rest of your life they get to pay you less money. So, hey, Lane, this has been a fascinating thing. I'm years away from even needing this. I found it fascinating. I have to imagine people in their 50s and 60s are going to find this supremely beneficial. If they want to get more information, you mentioned socialsecuritylane.com, where they can get information. Is that right?
Yeah. We have a customized, I have a financial planning firm, and we provide a professional Social Security analysis. There's a nominal fee for that, but I think you'll find it well worth the fee. So.
Okay, great. And then also people can check out Financial Fastlane right here on YouTube to be kept in the loop on all things Social Security. Lane Martinsen, thank you so much for coming on today's show.
Thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate it.